First and foremost, I can probably say training and development.
In my work environment, we have actually something called a ping pong table. We go regularly and do ping pong.
Places that have a lot of space for like collaboration and like teamwork.
Pets, lots of color, lots of fun, smiling faces.
Bright and have lots of natural light and inspire creativity.
A lot of like break space, like couches, like if I want to like not sit at my desk.
Bonuses, I think, for like hard work.
Something that is realistic and is achievable and then compensates you accordingly.
Maybe a fitness area.
And then a coffee machine, for sure.
For me, it's not always about monetary rewards, but something that gives me ability to grow and develop myself.
You need to be able to rely on each other, so it's like psychological safety, trust.
Where ideas could be shared, and more importantly, ideas were honored.
Somewhere that I can get a lot out of people who are learning, and also be able to share what I've learned with them.
They have to be people who you can bounce ideas off of and be honest with.
Where leadership is saying that everybody's important, everybody's opinions count.
Well, for me, people who don't take themselves too serious, because I like to have a bit of a laugh, and I take my job serious, but when I can have fun, I will, because I think it's important to be happy at work.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Vice President and General Manager, HR Product Line, ServiceNow, Deepak Bharadwaj.
Good morning. Oh, we can do better than that. Good morning. All right, there you go. Welcome to Knowledge18 and this HR track where it's all about delivering great employee experiences. I just love that video. Did you like it? What I like about it is it's raw, it's direct, and it's really from the heart. And I really like what that lady said at the end. She said, it's important to be happy at work. We spoke with these men and women on the streets and squares of major cities, and they were pretty clear on what they thought drove great employee experiences. They wanted to be productive, they wanted to be engaged, working with a great team, learning new things, working in collaborative workspaces, getting rewarded for their work. But most importantly, they wanted to be happy at work. You heard John this morning. He said, work matters. We spend a third of our lives at work, and we all want work to be that happy place. Let me introduce you to Emily, and we'll tell her story. Emily is a top performer in sales, and she's just got this opportunity to take up a leadership role in a different country. So she's actually based out of Boston, and she's going to be relocating to Sydney. Had we spoken to Emily on the streets of Boston, she would have probably said something like, hey, I love being productive. I love delivering results, and I feel like I've been rewarded for this promotion, with this promotion. She's really looking forward to learning new things, building a great new team. And she and her family are really excited about their future in a new country. So Emily is ready to hit the ground running. She is in her happy place. She can't wait to get started, and she's on top of the world. And nothing can stop her now. Or wait, can it? What could possibly go wrong? Well, it turns out that the relocation policy that Emily read was so long and confusing that she thought she read the wrong section and thinking it applied to her. When she showed up at the storage facility, she found out that she could only put into storage half of what she had to. And so her poor husband had to stay back and sort this out with the storage facility. Emily, in the meanwhile, decided that she's going to brave it and make this long trip to Sydney with her two kids, 7 and 3. The flight was relatively uneventful, but when she got to Sydney, she realized that in all that last-minute shuffle at the storage facility, she had forgotten to take copies of her transfer paperwork. So now poor Emily has to deal with immigration and customs at Sydney Airport for hours trying to sort this out with her two kids. I got two little girls of my own. They're not that much older than Emily's. And I know how this goes. Mommy, I'm hungry. Mommy, I'm bored. Or my favorite, Mommy, my sister is being mean to me. Right? So Emily is already tired, but she makes it through immigration and customs, and now she's trying to settle into her apartment. She's exhausted, but she's still jet-lagged. Bleary-eyed, she starts checking her bank account. And what she realizes is that she's several thousands of dollars short of the relocation funds that she was expecting. Emily is trying to get her family settled in, but she's so stressed. In fact, she has a call the next morning. She's far from ready. She's barely hanging in there. So Emily is no longer in her happy place. Too many things have gotten in the way. And what do you think this does for her productivity and engagement? Not much. I'm sure you're familiar with a story like this in your own careers and lives. And international relocation is just one example of when things could go horribly wrong. How about that hourly store worker who worked so hard, overtime, the week before Christmas so that he could buy gifts for his family, only to realize that his paycheck had a discrepancy and he did not know who to turn to for help? Or how about that analyst in finance who had to undergo emergency surgery over the weekend, and now she's worried about whether her insurance policy covers that procedure and how much time she's going to have to recover? Who's going to guide her? Now, we'll get back to Emily and see how we can help her in a bit, but today, really, we're going to talk about how you can make employee experience your competitive advantage by keeping employees like Emily in their happy place. But before we get into the how, let's talk about why. Why does this even matter? There's a big shift happening in the way CHROs are viewing their role. In fact, we just did a study, a CHRO point of view study with perspectives from over 500 HR leaders. And you know what the number one thing they said would define their role over the next 3 years? The number one response was this: it's the ability to create a digital and consumerized employee experience. So what they're really saying is they want to leverage technology to really simplify anything that can get in the way of making that employee productive and engaged. This is no different from how employees expect technology to serve them at work. This is very similar to what they see in their consumer lives, whether it's shopping, banking, travel, filing taxes, or maybe just getting a ride to the airport. That's their expectation. So let's dig into this a little bit deeper. Let's figure out why this shift is happening and why now. In order to do so, I'm going to bring up my first guest for this morning. She is a frequent speaker on trends that impact the HR industry as a whole, and she's accountable for the work of thousands of practitioners who are helping their clients with their most urgent human capital issues and HR transformations. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege and pleasure to welcome here on stage U.S. Human Capital Leader for Deloitte Consulting. Please welcome Erica Volini. Welcome, Erica.
Thank you.
Please. Great to have you here.
Thanks for having me. This is fantastic. And
Yep.
I love how many people are here to talk about HR.
Awesome. Yeah. You know, one of the things that they may not know about you is you've been really at your happy place for your entire career. You've just had one employer.
That's true. That's true. Although there are some happy days and some not. I think we all know that. But yes, I've been at Deloitte my whole career. It's very rare, of course, in the consulting industry. But I love your point. I think having that engaged experience through your entire employee life cycle is so incredibly important. So I'm completely aligned with that objective.
So let's talk about this focus on creating great experiences. Why is this happening, and what's driving this shift now?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question because many of you might be sitting there going, haven't we always wanted to create the ultimate employee experience? And I think the answer to that is yes. But one of the trends that we found over the last really year or so is something that we're calling the rise of the social enterprise, which is the idea that organizations today are having to respond to external pressures and external influences more than they ever have before. And there's a number of reasons for that, but one of the biggest reasons is a rise in the power of the individual. And we're seeing that the individual's preferences in how they work, the way they want to work with one another, the way they want to engage with their colleagues and also with the organization as a whole, it's starting to significantly influence how organizations respond. And as a result, I think we're seeing an uptick in this focus on experience and engagement and the tie to productivity, which I think is a tremendous opportunity for all of us.
Do you see this as a generational thing?
You know, it's funny. I think it's really easy to blame everything on the millennials.
Sure.
That's kind of become like the popular thing. Oh, we must have we either have a millennial or a boomer over there. I don't know. But I think that's, I hate to say it, but I don't think the millennials are any different from any other generations in terms of wanting to engage, wanting a great experience. I think the difference is that this generation, and it's not just millennials, it's the digital generation that we're now experiencing, they have a bigger platform and a bigger voice than they've ever had before. They have the advent of social media. So they can go out and with a single tweet or a single post, they're able to influence the view of that organization from an employment perspective, from a consumer perspective, and really influence the organization's strategy. And I think that's the difference maker. I don't know that, I think the millennials just happen to be ushered in with these tools, and that's why we're seeing this now.
So let's talk about that notion of employment brand then that you spoke about. Is that one of the key levers to driving this competitive advantage?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I mean, employment brand, I think, is something that has been to the side. But to me, employment brand is inextricably linked to consumer brand and corporate brand. And I think now we look at, and we're starting to call, employees or customers, and we have to treat them with customers. And I think this idea in your survey of the CHROs of a digitized and consumerized experience, the whole idea looking at the employees as consumers is so incredibly important. And so the employment brand has taken on much more influence in the organization. And I think, frankly, that's why we see the CHRO, the chief marketing officer, the chief digital officer starting to form partnerships in organizations because they're realizing you can't have an employment brand that's distinct from your consumer brand. You can't say that you have an innovative culture. This is my favorite example. You can't say you have an innovative culture and then a new hire comes in and you give them 50 forms to fill out the day they're onboarding. That's not innovative, not at least the last time I checked. Some applause, yes, okay, exactly. And so really linking those two and taking a customer view is key.
Yeah, that's great. So you've got this major impetus for CHROs to start working with other C-suite leaders. How, in that scenario, how do they start to measure things like impact to productivity or engagement? How do you know that you're having a meaningful tie-in with the things that impact your competitive advantage?
Yeah, by the way, I think that's key. I know we talked about employees being happy, but for those of us who tried to create a business case for these types of solutions, you know you have to tie to productivity. And I think it's a number of things. One is it's about how much time they're spending on tasks that are more administrative versus focused on their core operational tasks. That's the easy way to look at it. But also, you can look at things like the level of collaboration that's happening in the organization. One of the trends that we found is that the more that organizations are operating in networks of teams and the more collaboration that exists, the more that promotes innovation, which leads to increased productivity. So I think there are multiple ways to approach this, but it is important to always keep that productivity lens on any kind of investment like this.
And then what does this mean for the technology? So let's talk about the technology piece, which is going to be a big piece of the solution itself, right? This whole notion of using digital platforms. You've got multiple stakeholders now. You've got the CHRO and other business units who are, or functions that are trying to drive engagement and productivity. Who owns that technology? How does that work in real life?
Yeah, in real life, to me, there's no single ownership for these types of platforms moving forward. And I actually think this is a major shift. We just ran a survey as well, and one of the number one trend that we found was about collaboration in the C-suite. And out of 11,000 people, 73% said their C-suite leaders rarely, if ever, collaborate together on projects. Now, I don't know about you guys, but when I heard that, my jaw dropped to the ground, because I don't know how you get anything done in today's environment if there's not collaboration. So if you take the investment in technology and digital platforms around this, you need the CHRO to represent the workforce point of view. You need the business to represent their needs. You need the CIO there for investment. You need the chief marketing officer or the chief digital officer to be thinking about that consumerization of it. By the way, you need your CFO at the table, because these platforms require ongoing investment, very different than the days of one and done technology implementations. Platforms require that continued investment. And so it's that joint ownership that needs to happen. And I think that's one of the big shifts that we're going to need to see emerge in order to really take these investments in technology and these platforms and actually get the ROI out of them.
You know, one of the things that I find fascinating is over the past few years, we've spoken a lot about how HR leaders and CHROs really need to develop this, what do you call, financial proficiency, so they can build a business case and show ROI and things like that. I do believe that we are at this point when CHROs need to develop what I would call digital proficiency as well. Where do you see them starting to beef up their, their know-how, their expertise so that they get a front seat, so to speak, in driving these types of digital transformations in conjunction with these other lines of business?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it comes down to partnerships, and I think we're going to start to see the silos break down. I mean, we can't relegate all human capital issues to the HR function and go, you got that, right? I know the entire workforce is changing and every business need is changing, but as long as the CHRO's got that under control, check the box. I think there has to be that partnership, and the partnership between HR and IT is paramount to that. I could go on forever about the transformation of HR, but to me, a lot of these platforms provide the opportunity for increased capacity for the HR professional to learn things like digital analytics, which are key to being able to help the business execute their strategy moving forward. But it all comes down to that collaboration. That's actually one of the things I love about ServiceNow and the tools and what it provides, is that it's a platform that provides the opportunity to collaborate. Right? It's not just about workflow management. It's also about promoting collaboration and interaction across the organization. And from our research, we would say that is more important now than it's ever been before, if you're going to drive the level of innovation that you need to fuel your business strategy moving forward.
I couldn't have said that any better myself. Ladies and gentlemen, let's give Erica a warm round of applause. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wasn't she great? All right, so let's move on to the how. Tactics matter. And today, we are going to talk about a brand new approach to how you can make employee experience your competitive advantage. We'll introduce you to design thinking during moments that matter. And then we'll actually show you a product demonstration of how you can use the latest technology to bring to life these wonderful experiences during those moments that matter. And then you'll get to learn from customers that have already embarked on this journey of creating these great experiences during those key moments that matter. So why focus on moments that matter? Well, Moments that matter are when your employees need you the most. If you think about an employee's journey, every employee's journey is going to have, it's going to be different within your organization with different twists and turns, but they will all have these moments that matter that collectively will define that employee's experience within your organization. And you cannot keep employees like Emily in their happy place if you don't address their experience during these key moments that matter. And if you do a good job, you actually create an opportunity for yourselves to truly differentiate and build that competitive differentiation. So how do you create these great experiences during moments that matter? Well, you do that by putting the employer at the center of everything. I'm going to actually illustrate this with a metaphor that I'm sure all of us can relate to. Not so long ago, when we had to travel from one place to the other, and we didn't know where we were going, this is what we had. A paper map, this wonderful piece of technology that maybe some millennials here don't know what it does. But this was the state of the art. And about the only thing that people remember about this is it was just so hard to fold. And then came the internet, and what that did is it automated this manual process of trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B. Made it simpler. But now we live in this age of apps and smartphones. And now it's not just about trying to figure out how to get from one place to the other. It's about you. It's about your experience. So if you take an example of something like Google Maps, the app can predict where you're headed as soon as you get into the car. It knows how long it's going to take for you to get there. It can recommend detours if there's a traffic backup, and it can guide you to the nearest coffee shops and gas station. This is putting you in the center of the experience, and it's creating something that is so personalized. It's so predictive. And it's easy that now you use this not when you don't know how to get from one place to the other, but for every walking, biking, and driving trip that you might ever take. This is the transformation of your travel journey. How about your employee journey? What if there were a Google Maps for the employee journey? There can be. So don't just stop at automating workflows and manual processes. Build on that service delivery foundation further and create these wonderful experiences during moments that matter by putting the employee at the center of that experience. Now, what makes this type of transformation possible is a concept called design thinking. And today, we happen to have with us someone who has written and spoken extensively about design thinking. He is a noted industry researcher, blogger, thought leader, analyst, and he's had an impeccable track record. It's just uncanny of predicting every disruption in the HR technology industry space. A man who virtually needs no introduction, ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming founder of Burson & Associates and principal at Deloitte, Josh Burson. Welcome, Josh. Please.
What a nice introduction.
Well, you know, the thing that the reason I feel like I connect with you is somewhere deep down, we are both product managers. We love building product.
Yep. So
let's start with design thinking, something that you've spoken about a lot in your research. How do you define design thinking, and especially as we talk about personalized and predictive and simple, how do we think about design thinking?
Well, I think what's really happened in HR is we've really realized that our original, and I've been doing this for almost 20 years, our original process focus on a process didn't really pay off because there were all these things that would happen during the process that we couldn't predict. So what design thinking really is, the core is really what the academics say is empathy. It's really listening and feeling and understanding what your employees are going through. And the only way you really do that is by visiting them and spending time with them and observing them over a period of time, not just during a transaction. So many, many examples of this, which I can give you as we get going. So it's starts with empathy, and then it's iterative design, because most of the employee experiences, you don't really know what's going to happen initially, and you have to solve it over time. So a lot of the design thinking exercises are iterative design and continuous improvement of what's going on in an employee's journeys.
Yeah, and when we think about design, I think the first thing that comes to people's mind is the UI, but that's not what you're talking about,
No.
right?
No, and I mean, I'll give you, I've got a lot of examples. I'll give you one, I think that's pretty easy to understand. So I remember visiting a telephone company that has lots and lots of young employees coming in, working in the call centers, selling telephone equipment and service. And they said they had a 60% turnover rate. And it was so bad that they have employees that come to work there and then don't show up the next day. They just walk out. They can't take it. They don't even quit. They just don't come back. And so they tried to do a bunch of training. So they designed a process. We're going to do a first week or a first month training. And it really had no impact. And what they realized was that there's a first day experience, there's a first week experience, there's a first month experience, there's a first quarter experience, and there's a first sort of 9-month experience. And at each point in that journey, they need different things, they need different training, they need to learn different systems, they need to meet different people. And once they understood that, they designed a series of applications and experiences that took place during that 9-month and radically changed their retention rate, improved their performance, improved their sales revenue. That's an example.
Great, so let's transition into the how, right? And the first question, actually, before I do that, I wanted to share this with the audience, and I shared this yesterday with you, so I know you cannot see this, but I took a picture of my 10-year-old's journal, and they actually did this design thinking exercise, and they've got this framework with 6 steps. The first step is actually empathize, right? So it's empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test. So sounds like they're teaching this in 4th grade these days, which is great.
Right.
But we need folks now, today. So how can this group of wonderful HR leaders and IT leaders bring design thinking into their organizations, and how do they build the skills that are required?
Well, I think it's a little easier than you think. Most of the people in HR that I know are really people, and they really want to do the right thing for their employees. And we've been constrained with this sort of process design methodology that really sort of got in the way. So the solution is to take a problem that you have in your company, and maybe it's onboarding, maybe it's transition from individual contributor to first line leader, which everybody has that problem. Maybe it's a physical move when you have to move to another country, and study it. Go out and interview people that are going through it. Look at what they're going through the first day or week or month or maybe a couple of months later, and get to know what's really happening and iterate, just like your kids are learning in school, and iterate on solutions. I'll give you another example. Very, very well-known consumer packaged goods company, very famous for their leadership development model, and the head of HR told me, we've realized we have a problem. We have this wonderful process of building these general managers. We rotate them around the company. We send them on overseas assignments, and about 60 or 70% of them quit when they come back to the States. And he said, we couldn't figure out why that was, and the reason was we didn't find them a job when they came back. They had to find it themselves.
It's made it hard for them.
Yeah, and so he said, this is absurd. We never designed that into the process. We designed getting them ready for the international assignment, but we didn't design the process of bringing them back and integrating them back into the US operation. So, I mean, it took them a while to figure that out, but they looked at the data and realized it. So every company has those derailer, problems, and if you can find them, that's where I would focus.
So when you think about technology solutions to solving this problem, and you've started engaging with customers that are using solutions like ServiceNow and our platforms, in the grand landscape of all of the HR technology that is out there, how do you see us fitting into that landscape? And especially as we help customers with solutions that are not just about solving their problems within HR, but this is the employee experience across the enterprise. So how do you see us play in that space?
Well, I was telling you back there, I think you're sitting on the biggest business opportunity that ServiceNow has, because there are just as many HR departments as there are IT departments. And the HR employee journey is far more complex and maybe richer than the IT journey. Now, I'm not demeaning IT, I don't work in IT, but I know what employees go through. And what we need to give companies is a tool set and a set of services so they can build these solutions for these journeys that employees are going through, which you guys are doing. In fact, some of the demos that we just saw this morning, which I saw a little bit yesterday, are really about that. Because many times, maybe it's an app, it might be a check-in with another employee at some point in time, it might be a transaction, it might be a chat or an interactive with an agent, and all those tools are available in your platform. So if I were an HR department and I was doing one of these design thinking projects, I would get to know everything you guys have and use those tools as much as I possibly can. Otherwise, I have to go out and do it myself. So, and I think there's another opportunity, which is over time, your layer of software could potentially shield or improve the experience with the core ERP HR platforms that we have, which are great, but there's a lot of them. And we have to know which one to log into. So there's all sorts of opportunities, I think, for ServiceNow to provide tools for the HR profession to do this.
Yeah, and I think that's why this whole notion of the Google Maps for the employee journey, I believe, resonates with a number of customers that I've spoken with. And it really nicely dovetails into some of what you have written about, right? All right, so maybe last question, the moments that matter that we spoke about, have you seen customers use some sort of a framework to help prioritize which ones to go after? Because if you started to boil the ocean, you would be in analysis paralysis for a long time.
Well, one of the CHROs made a comment to me that I think really I try to remind people of. Spend your time where your company makes money. What is going on in it might be sales training or new hire sales. I mean, if your salespeople are more productive in the first 3 months, everybody's going to be happy. Find a problem that your CEO, your CFO, your head of HR, your head of operations would agree that is a problem, and I would really be willing to spend some time and money working on that. There's a lot of things we do in HR that are absolutely interesting and important to employees, but they may not be the first in line from the CFO. So I think areas of, maybe it's fraud, maybe it's accidents, maybe it's turnover in the call centers, turnover in the sales organization. Find one of those. You'll get a whole bunch of people that are going to want to help you with this, and you'll solve it. There'll be a big ROI. Then you can go on to the next one.
Yeah, and as Erica was talking about, that's also a great way to get support from the rest of the organization across all of these other departments as well.
Absolutely.
Excellent. So ultimately, it's a direct impact to your bottom line, and ultimately, money talks, I guess.
Yep.
Excellent. Well, that was a very insightful set of comments that you had, Josh, and I hope that the audience here can take away something from that in terms of how they can truly start to make employee experience their competitive advantage. Thank you so much for being here. Ladies and gentlemen, please give Josh a big round of applause. Thank you. I feel inspired every time I speak with Josh. He always has these wonderful product ideas. But speaking of product, what good is all that design thinking if your digital platform cannot bring it to life? So let's see how technology can help. Let's rewind back to where we left Emily off. Emily was stressed. She didn't know what she was going to do the next morning because her relocation had gone so wrong. So remember what went wrong. We had the issue with that relocation policy being so long and confusing that she read the wrong section, and then she had some major issues with the storage situation, and her husband had to stay back. So that was number one. Second thing was she had to spend hours at the airport trying to deal with customs and immigration because she didn't have the right paperwork on her, and she had those 2 kids as well. So that was painful. And then she just didn't know where to go for help when she needed answers to her questions around her relocation funds. So what we want to do is show you how ServiceNow can help Emily get back to that happy place by creating an experience that is really personalized, it's predictive, and makes it easy for her. So in order to do so, I'm going to bring up on stage someone who is a master of telling a story through a product demonstration. Please welcome Product Marketing Manager here at ServiceNow, Samantha Barth.
Hi, Deepak.
How are you?
Good to see you. A master.
All right, no pressure.
No pressure.
So let's go back to Happy Emily. So here's Happy Emily, and she's got this promotion. She's ready to hit the ground running. She's super excited, and we want to keep her there. We want nothing to go wrong. So how do we do that? Take it away.
Yeah, well, Emily's obviously thrilled. This is a great opportunity. But as she prepares, she's going to have a lot of questions, many different things to coordinate. Now, luckily for Emily, her employer is pretty on top of things. So she starts out by getting this email that congratulates her on her promotion, and it directs her to her one-stop shop for information, the Employee Service Center. First of all, it's gorgeous. She's seeing beautifully branded content that immediately engages her, and she's seeing information about her. Not just the basics, like her name or where she works, but what's going on with her transfer. Now, Deepak, you told me last year that when you're looking for answers, you often rely on Google search, but what would be even cooler?
That's right, Samantha. This year, my expectations are dramatically higher. And I've spent all of last year binge watching shows like Silicon Valley and Bollywood movies and stand-up. So when I'm on Netflix, I find that I rarely search.
Right.
Netflix automatically recommends what it thinks I will like. So this year, I'm going to say, I don't want to go hunting for answers. I want these answers and relevant information to come find me.
Fair enough. I think Emily would feel the same way. And what we're actually seeing here is the system already knows a lot about Emily. So while she could go search, each announcement she's seeing is being triggered by details that are already part of her information. She works in the Boston office right now, and she will for a couple more weeks. She's a manager, a director even, in the organization. And as we've already discussed, she's in the middle of an overseas move. So that brings us to this campaign where HR is sharing details about her relocation benefits. All of this is happening because of a great new feature in our London release, which is called Targeted Content Automation. Think of targeted content automation as a way for groups like HR to be able to deliver personalized and even scheduled information to employees. Could be an email like we saw earlier, or it could be messages or media that are on the service center. And what's even cooler is those messages or those media can be strung together as part of an overall campaign, like we're seeing with her job transfer, that's going to create a great experience for Emily. And it doesn't matter whether Emily's needing an answer from finance or IT or facilities or HR. She doesn't have to go hunt for those answers or those resources. They're coming to find her. HR is obviously creating a great experience for Emily. It's highly personalized, but it also means that they're going to have a higher level of case deflection. And just think how helpful this would be for them in campaigns like an annual performance review or new hires and onboarding and job transfers.
Emily's employer has really started to embrace this notion of design thinking, and they've put Emily at the center of that experience. And so what we are seeing here now is not only is this experience personalized, but it's also predictive in that it's anticipating the information that she needs or she might be interested in. Okay, Samantha, let's now take this concept of personalization and apply it to knowledge articles. That policy document was so long and confusing.
Too long, yep.
And how can we now help Emily get to the section that really applies to her and make sure that this time her husband is on that flight with her to Sydney?
Yeah, that policy was too confusing. When Emily goes to look at the relocation policy now, she's only going to see the content that is applying to a US-based employee at director level. No confusion. Now, as she reads through it, she's going to notice in the transfer of goods area that one item is not quite going to work for her family. They have a grand piano, and that grand piano is not going to fit in a 500 cubic foot storage facility. But now, rather than showing up with the stuff to put away and nowhere to put it, she gets that right information. And again, we're leveraging a new feature in our London release. This is possible because of a great offering called Knowledge Blocks, which we're actually going to introduce in London with limited access. And what Knowledge Blocks will do is rely upon user criteria and system information to filter the article content within each knowledge article and only present users with the right details. So think about what this means for HR. If you're maintaining a policy on something like time off and leave or maybe healthcare benefits, that kind of thing, HR no longer is going to have to maintain multiple variations of that same policy just to support different employee groups, and those employees won't see the wrong one. So we get ease of maintenance for HR and an increased personalized experience for the employee.
You know, this was the #1 requested feature from our advisory councils in you, our customer community. So we listened, and I'm excited that this is now part of our product. So thank you for all your feedback. Thank you. So we've got Emily now reading the right section of the policy document. How does she go through the approval process? How do we make it easy for her?
Yeah, she still needs somewhere to put that piano, right? So easy for Emily, she just opens a case. And as she does so, she's quickly guided through a simple form that lets her submit her request and move on with her day. She's busy right now. She needs to be able to shift her focus back to work, and she even wants to get out of the office in time to be able to make it to her daughter's recital tonight. So meanwhile, HR can approve that request. They'll probably need to generate a change to her transfer agreement for her since the terms are different, but Emily grabs her phone, heads out of the office. Later on that evening, sure enough, HR has done their work, and Emily gets a notification to go sign an updated version of the employee transfer agreement. But she's not at her desk, and she goes to the Employee Service Center on her phone. As she does, she accesses her to-dos, and what she's going to notice is that she actually also needs to approve something for IT. Maybe she doesn't take care of that right now. She moves ahead and does the signature, getting her updated transfer agreement with the new storage terms locked down and ready to go.
That's it?
That's it. Super simple.
Piece of cake. All right,
Yeah.
so we've got the storage situation figured out because now she's got the right approvals. Husband is on the plane with her, so that's great. How do we make sure that this time she lands there with the transfer paperwork? How do we arm her with that before she leaves for Australia?
Yeah, well, I mean, she has a lot going on, and it'd be easy to understand how any one of us could leave for the airport without all our things in our hands. And this time, her employer is thinking about that as part of that transfer campaign. So they sent her this nice email reminder prompting her to print that agreement so she'll leave before she goes to the Boston airport with that in hand. And where does she find it? On the Employee Service Center. And what's really cool is when that case closed, the document automatically became part of Emily's record, and she was able to go access it there to print it out and take it with her. HR is leveraging 2 different features to create this experience for Emily. One you're probably expecting me to mention by now is, again, we're seeing targeted content automation because they leveraged that email to remind her, but we're also seeing a new great feature in the London release that's called Employee Document Management. What Employee Document Management will do is give HR teams a single way, a single interface where you can retrieve, store, purge, all securely, any employee documents that are associated with your case files. So no more keeping things in some in email, some in a file cabinet, some in a variety of different software solutions. You've got that single interface. And what that means for HR is, while maintenance becomes easier, compliance becomes better.
And Emily got that reminder as well as easy access to those documents. So this time when she lands at that airport, she's not going to have these hungry, wailing kids bothering her for hours, but she's going to breeze through customs and immigration. And so now she is trying to settle into her apartment. And in the middle of the night, she has all these questions about her relocation funds. How do we help her with that?
Yeah, so the family got to Sydney. They're all settled in their new home. That's great. Jet lag might set in. Emily can't sleep. Rather than just toss and turn, she decides to get up and pay a few bills. When she logs onto her banking service, that's when she discovers that the last direct deposit she got from payroll is short by thousands and thousands and thousands of relocation dollars she thought she was going to see. Rather than stress about it all weekend, she can go get her answers on that Employee Service Center. And because her employers really designed it with her needs in mind, now that she is in Sydney and her transfer is complete, the content has all changed. And it's not just content about Emily. She's even seeing links about her family, like, how do I set up my home internet service? Or how do I make this move easier on my family? In addition to the things we might expect, like, what's going on with the Sydney team? What have they got going in the next couple of weeks? And where can I find some common information or questions that I would need to know as I settle in? Now, she came here to find an answer about where that money went. She clicks on Get Support. And even though it's the middle of the night on a weekend and no one's in the office in Boston or Sydney, she engages with a chat agent to quickly get the answers she needs. And she's asking about pay. So she types in the word pay, clicks a few times, and pretty soon the chat is able to guide her to a knowledge article about the relocation expense reimbursement. When she reviews it, she's going to find out that even though the company provides some incidental money to help her with the cost of travel, they are going to pay most of her reimbursement in a paper check within the next 30 days. So they didn't forget. It'll be there soon. And now, rather than worrying about her money problems all weekend, Emily can go back and relax. Now, if that hadn't given her the answers she needed, the chat agent can even help her open a case to get a little bit more help. And what's really cool, love this, she's using this in Employee Service Center, right? She could have done this same conversation in a tool like Slack or Microsoft Teams. So for the HR person, obviously, they're getting an additional level of support that means greater case deflection, especially for things that are repeated or basic inquiries. And for Emily, she gets one other opportunity to have a great experience where it really is personalized to her to get the information.
And with her money worries behind her, she can either check out some great content on this wonderful-looking Employee Service Center, but I think what she's going to do is catch up on that much-needed sleep.
I hope she gets some sleep, yeah.
Great. So what we've seen is how we have applied design thinking to this very key moment that matters, designed that experience for her end-to-end, leveraged the latest technology in our latest release, and really made it simple, personalized, predictive for Emily. Now, Emily is actually going to be productive, engaged. She can hit the ground running and ultimately create competitive differentiation for her employer. Samantha, what a wonderful demo, as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That deserves a high five. This is the largest conference discussing service delivery and employee experience on this planet. And really, it's about you, the community. And John alluded to this earlier as well. You are a special group. You have really embraced this notion of technology in the service of people. You know, you take pride in not only driving these great employee experiences, and Pat Turigny spoke about how it was all about the employee, but what about your own HR teams? After all, they're employees too. So when you speak with HR and IT leaders, and some of them are pictured here and maybe here in the audience as well, you will hear about how with our platform, they are now able to shift from a reactive to a proactive way of service delivery. And what that's doing is it's driving efficiencies within their teams. So whether that's shared services, whether it's business partners, whether it's specialist teams. And so because of that, what's happening is these specialist teams can now focus on higher value-added strategic activities. So for example, you will hear of IT leaders talking about how IT is now able to save thousands of hours of lost productivity because now they are better able to leverage data otherwise locked in these HR systems of record during key moments that matter. You might hear of how Tier 1 support agents are able to retrain themselves to provide more Tier 2-like consultative service, thereby also creating a talent pipeline for HR functions like benefits or employee relations. Or you might hear about how HR operations teams are upskilling themselves from process automation specialists to lifecycle event designers. These are big transformations, and you're getting the recognition that you really deserve. For example, you will hear of CIOs that are now publicly proclaiming how HR is leading the bar. You're the gold standard for digital transformation and innovation, and for other departments to follow. Or when a CEO decides that your hashtag of how you work differently is just so great, he likes it so much, he starts to repurpose that for the entire company. Or when your employees are so thankful for what you're doing for them and their families, especially in the aftermath of a devastating hurricane. This is real transformation. And because of this, you're building your brand, you're building your team's brand, and in the process, you're making your employer brand your competitive advantage. So how about a round of applause for all the HR and IT leaders here? Now, I'm going to bring up on stage my last guest for this morning. This pioneer is leading a newly formed team to drive digital initiatives for employee experience on a global scale and working side by side with IT as his employer makes this transition from a traditional automaker to a technology company. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Division General Manager from Nissan, Head of Global Digital HR, Raju Vijay. Welcome, Raju.
Thank you.
Thank you, please. Thanks for doing this for us.
Oh, absolutely. Pleasure.
So one of the things that I wanted to start out with is your title. Your title says Global Digital HR. What does that mean?
So a couple of things. Now that I saw what all the response, the number one response was to digitize and consumerize, I think my boss was one of them that responded to that.
So we had something to do with it?
With that, I'm sure. All jokes aside. So 20 months ago, the CHRO for Nissan and I, at the time, sat down and talked through vision on what we are trying to get done within the company. And we wanted to get away from this notion of shadow IT. We were changing and morphing our service delivery to a digital capability and enhancing the moments that matter. And we decided we'll coin ourselves the digital HR function within HR. So truly within HR, functionally aligned, partnered with IT to deliver what the experience should be. And that's how that came about. Global being truly global at 133 countries. That's the representation I have across 110,000 employees globally. So that's what we cover from a platform perspective.
And when you think about employee experiences, where does that fit in your priorities? And how do you think that drives your competitive advantage?
So you rightly said, Nissan, 80 plus years in existence. For the first time, we publicly acknowledged that we are actually a technology company, not a manufacturer of automobiles. I mean, that comes out at the back end. But the amount of infrastructure and technology that goes into what that vehicle comes out with, the type of talent we are going after are quite significantly different. So part of the experience, part of the onboarding piece, part of maintaining and developing leaders for us in the years to come, we are constantly against the same talent that the leading tech guys are going after. So how do I create an environment and an experience that is actually parallel to what they could expect somewhere else with the experience and the moments that matter? That's what this platform lets us do from a competitive perspective.
So tell us more about your journey. Is this better? Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey as you once selected ServiceNow to be that technology and your implementation process itself? How did that turn out?
Been very fortunate over the 20 months. I have a phenomenal team, and they are here in the audience with me. We selected a very good partner in KPMG. So I should acknowledge them in terms of this journey. So this started off an idea within digital HR to just keep track of what we are doing from a workload perspective across the board. So we did a snapshot of where are we spending our time, and we realized we are spending about 70% of our time doing support-related work versus anything strategic or consultative for the organization. So we wanted to get us to a better platform that has all the things that we need to do look at, so we can analyze the type of work we do, the time we spend doing it, and what are better ways to getting us into RPA and robotics and other pieces. So that's where this journey started. Inside digital HR, we quickly realized it's going to touch almost everybody that has anything to do with what they are doing from an experience perspective. So we quickly rolled it out to a global 110,000 population. We went live in about 14 weeks total. This was the first agile project within HR globally for Nissan, very successfully delivered. We set about with a very defined set of things we will do from the first release perspective, with the notion that with agility and with continuous improvement, you'll create a backlog and continue to deliver on that as we proceed. So we're in our second stage of that piece. We're taking into automation of transactional HR and decoupling transactional HR from workflow, leaving transactions to do what they need to be doing in the back end, pulling workflow into ServiceNow so we can route the approval process and then leave the process simplified versus mixing the two together, which is inherently what people end up doing in the ERP model. Josh mentioned that a little. So that's my next progression. We are actively into RPA. We actually have our first bot built. Her name is Destiny. So she does a couple of things from a prototype perspective for us. We'll operationalize Destiny in the coming months and weeks. So that's the journey we are in, and that's how it started.
So when your employees think about ServiceNow, what does it do for them? What is the emotional connection that you're trying to drive?
So nobody thinks about it's the experience. It is devoid of the platform. It is devoid of the product. It is the enabler to that experience. So that's what ServiceNow does. We branded ServiceNow inside Nissan as Engage at Nissan. And that was intentional because it wasn't associated to a product per se, but what do? You engage in what you need to get done in different moments of your life, and in building that experience online and the digitization of that experience. So Engage at Nissan is the vehicle for any interaction that happens, be it self-service, be it knowledge consumption, or be it an interactive chat or a case that you build and put out there. Alongside that, we're actually expanding that capability into operational service centers within Nissan in a spoke and a hub model where the policies and processes are consumerized in the context of personas. So it's location sensitive in terms of what you consume and what you are able to paint when the request comes in. So that's the experience from an employee perspective.
So that's truly their Google Maps for their employee journey. That's great. And so maybe one last question, Raju. What about the outcomes that you're trying to drive? Have you started measuring anything that is of note?
Still early on, so we went live November 14th. I'm probably getting the dates wrong, it's somewhere in there. Since then, we have done another minor enhancements and stuff, keeping up on dashboards and things. One of the things I liked engaging ServiceNow early on was a value management partnership along with your value-based team. So they came and baselined us in where things stood the way it did at the time we started this agile activity. We are expecting to start building on that. I'm able to see global cases and knowledge articles across cases automatically served up as we go through this. This didn't exist in our environment. We come from a plethora of various platforms, including Excel and emails and phone calls. All that is centralized into one common repository. So I'm able to see volumes. I can adjust to peak during benefits enrollments. I can adjust to peaks during performance appraisal processes as we go through the motions. Still early days, but we are seeing where we can act on some of that data that's coming out. And there is active work going on in terms of the operational environments that we are creating where this is going to be the base of that platform definition.
So 14-week global implementation, that's very impressive, and thank you so much for being here and sharing your words of wisdom. Ladies and gentlemen, Raju Vijay.
Thank you. Thanks.
So Raju will actually be speaking on Wednesday afternoon. You can catch his session there, but we also have over 30 HR customers that are sharing their stories, so whether that's shared services or unified employee portals or moments that matter like onboarding. Be sure to catch them all. You can download the Knowledge18 app. I'm told it has had some issues this morning, so please bear with us. Hopefully it'll come back on soon. But that's where you will get a sense for all these sessions that are happening. Use this as an opportunity to network with your peers, and also be sure to catch the product experts so you know what's in our latest release. So in closing, I'll leave you with this. Employees like Emily deserve to be in their happy place. By leveraging design thinking, and using the latest technology, you can truly create that Google Maps for every employee's journey. So I wish you all the best in your mission to making employee experience your competitive advantage. Have a fantastic conference, and thank you.